Welcome to Gaia Radio, a program hosted by Gaia University International. For further programming information, please check out www.gaiauniversity.org.
Greetings, everyone. This is Jennifer English, and I'm excited for today's call. We have our tutorial with managing time, managing promises using the MAP model. Kirsten Liegmann is with us, and she's going to guide us through the process. On an IT front, we have an email that went out this morning, about maybe 20, 30 minutes ago. And in that email, there was a link to the presentation. It's a Google presentation that we're going to use today for the call. And then there was also 2 Word documents that are map templates that we'll use during an exercise. So if you haven't already checked your email, please go online and get that. If you're unable to access those 3 elements, we will still want you to be on the call, and we'll integrate you as best we can. It's only a portion of the call, so it will be okay if you're not able to access. But if you do have access, then go ahead and do that now. There's about 7 people who are on the call, and we're registered at 15. We're going to go ahead and start now anyway, and I really appreciate those of you who have called in on time. And I'm going to, at this time, hand it over to Kirsten to get us going with check-ins. Kirsten? Kirsten, I think you're on self-mute.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, you had me on local mic. So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. It's really fabulous to be here. This is a subject matter that I have been involved with and practicing personally, for probably almost 10 years now. As I said, it's the MAP process, Managing Action Practice, and I got involved with it through my MBA program and meeting a leadership coach there who I then studied with, who introduced me to this process. And so we've been slowly bringing it into Gaia U, and I personally use it with Leora, who in this case is my customer, and Ava does it for me. So I am very excited to introduce this to you as one of the tools to make us more effective world changers. So I would love to first start this call with a few little check-ins. And what I'd like you to just focus on is what drew you to this call in the first place. What is your interest around it? So just say your name and where you're at, and then just briefly address that question of what drew you to this call, why are you interested in this subject matter. So we'll go in the order that I see. So I'll start with Angela and just give it a sec so Jennifer can bring you in. Angela, would you please give your check-in? Angela, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, now we can hear you.
Now you can hear me, okay.
Great.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Great.
So what's drawn me to this particular subject, I guess, is that I've always worked in fields where it's been important to manage time and promises. And I feel it's really important in projects. And I haven't really ever found a system that works great. So I'm excited to hear your process. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Angela. All right, and then we have Nicole.
Hear me?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Yep. Okay. So it's Nicole, and I'm just interested because my whole sort of learning with Gaia Uni has really made me realize how important things like this are in how we manage our lives and how effective we are. So I'm just really, always looking out for new tools to integrate into my life, and saw this and thought, yeah, looks great.
Excellent. Thanks, Nicole. And remember, you guys, to say where you're at, because it's always fun to hear. So, Angela, I assume you're in Brazil. Nicole, you're in the UK right now?
Yeah, I'm in Somerset in the southwest. And
Great.
It's raining. Yay!
Oh, yay! Fabulous. Great. Then we'll go to Virginia.
Hi there, Kirsten.
Hey.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm here because I'm interested in learning something new about time management. I'm used to having to be flexible with my schedule because I'm usually juggling 2 or 3 different projects even before Gaia. I did anticipate having a lot more to do in the spring because of what I'm involved in my second project, and I thought I had managed that into the schedule, and it didn't happen because of something unexpected occurring. So, I'm wondering how to make your promises work when the whole landscape shifts.
Great. Thank you, Virginia. And then we have Jorge.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, I'm in Mexico, central Mexico, and it's raining here too. Finally, we've had a dry season or super long season last year, so rain is very welcomed, and it's been raining now a lot. Let's hope it doesn't go all the way around and we have excess of rain, but for the moment we are very appreciative of what's happening here. And I'm here because, I guess I'm the cusp of my life when this is what I need. Everything has been synchronized. Right now it's so hard to work with all the things that I'm working with and be efficient. So any tool that I can learn is helpful. So I'm here. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Jorge. And we have Haley. Good morning.
Hi, everyone. I'm calling in from California, and it's not raining here. It's actually going to be a nice summer day. I'm really excited. It was really hot yesterday, and I'm here because, I'm just interested in learning more about managing my time to best suit my work and my projects and just myself. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Great. Thanks. And then we have Kevin.
Hello, everybody. I'm calling in from Massachusetts, where we're sweating out the first heat wave of the year. It's the second day at 95 degrees, which is a little early for us to get that weather after a particularly cool spring. And I'm in the process of figuring out how to track lots of different things in my life and in creating a system to keep track of a number of different variables that are dynamically moving. And included in that is time and action. And so I'm really interested in integrating this as I move forward.
Great. Hey, Mansi?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm calling from India, and it's raining here right now actually. I'm not sure if you can all hear it. And this is a wonderful break from the heat. And I'm on this call because time management has been a pretty big theme for me in the past 1 month, and I'm even doing an output packet on it. I think it's probably become important for me right now because I recently turned 21, and ever since I've been having the feeling of having my whole life ahead of me and wanting to plan and consciously manage it as effectively as I can. So I'm looking to be exposed to various tools and other people who've done that and had a lot more experience with it.
Great. Thank you, Monty. And finally we have Ria.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm calling in from St. John, New Brunswick, Canada on the East Coast. And I want to be more effective with my time, and so hopefully this will help me with organizing that, and just, yeah, that's about it.
Great. Thanks, Ria. And we have Erica.
Yes, I'm here. This is Erica calling from San Rafael, California, and great to hear your voices. And I'm here because it's always good to have access to new insights and tools regarding how we can be more efficient as we move forward with our good work in the world. And it's so difficult sometimes to balance everything, and especially now I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I'm still getting used to having her, and it kind of twists everything that I was used to do, and I have been finding that it's challenging to meet my commitments and have to renegotiate, and so I am looking forward to get some new insights and new perspectives in terms of how to manage all these good things in our life.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Erica. And then Tess. Welcome, Tess.
Hey.
And what we're doing is we're checking in and just sharing what brought you to this call.
Yeah. Well, what brought me is that I really love doing things and making an effect on the world, and I have a lot of ideas, and I notice a pattern that I have many, many, many more ideas than things that actually happen, and sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's not, and I'm not as effective as I want to be, and I'm always seeking balance around that. So anything about managing that is always really attractive to me.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the big challenges of people in the eco-social movement is there's always way more to do than what we have capacity. And so one of the things we'll be looking at, how do we evaluate the different tantalizing ideas that are on our plate. Great. Dave.
Hello,
Dave,
I missed the checking question.
Yeah, we're just briefly saying our name, where we're from, and what brought you to this call.
Well, this is Dave Shaw from Santa Cruz, California. Hello, everybody, and I got a little taste of MAP from Kirsten. Oh, when was that? In Mexico.
2009, I think.
Yeah, and I just want more.
Great. And then Ava. And Ava actually works with me. She's the admin assistant here. And I would like to ask Ava to just give a little experience of, so she reports to me using the MAP process. And so I'll ask Ava to actually add a little bit of her own experience into her check-in. Ava?
Hello, everyone. Hi, thanks, Kirsten.
Hi.
I am calling in from beautiful, sunny Boulder, Colorado. It's been a little too sunny this summer, and we're needing some rain. So anyway, when Kirsten told me she was doing this, I asked her if she would like me to do a quick testimonial for everyone, just so that you guys can hear how effective this system really is in real-life experience. Because, it's always kind of hard to hear a concept and then expect it to do one thing and then it doesn't really work. So in my experience, this system really, really works well. And I was really hesitant at first. I should give you a little background. I started with Gaia University in August of 2010, so coming up on 2 years now. And Kirsten, and I hit it off really well right at first. And she told me right when we started that she wanted to do this map system with me to help manage my promises to her and to the Gaia University. So at first I was really hesitant, and Kirsten remembers this. I was, oh, what is this? Like, I don't need that. We just can make a list or, manage it some other way. And she was like, Ava, this really needs to happen. You need to start doing it. And once I actually went in and took the time and opened myself up to learning more about it and actually using it, it became such a useful tool for us. I would say the most effective thing that it does is just that you have all of your promises written down on a piece of paper, and you both have to review that once a week or however often you decide to do that. And Kirsten, my agreement is usually on a weekly basis. So I write down all of my promises to her. I go through each step and say if it's going well or if I need her help. And that way, before we're even having our meeting, we're both on the same page. And so that's really helpful. And if there is a breakdown situation, I can bring that to the table and tell her, look, this is not working. I need help. And it's very open and really easy to communicate with each other. And I've had many other employment situations where it's been really hard to talk to somebody about what's happening and what's going wrong. And you just don't feel comfortable. But with this system, it really works, and it gives you a really open, comfortable place to bring all things to the table and not have to leave anything out. So I've used it, and I really support using this in your life. And, you can apply it to all realms of life. The way I use it is just with Kirsten and Gaia U, but, if I ever do have, people that work for me or, other employers, I'm going to definitely recommend this to them. So that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Ava. I'm glad to hear it's working for you. I'm kidding.
You know it is.
I know. So as you probably all are already hearing in the language that we're using, there is a very particular language that comes with this. And so this comes from experience. My invitation to you is to just take the language in a neutral way, because sometimes some of the words we use can be trigger points for old patterns that are unresolved or something. So what I invite you to do is just hear those terms in neutral. And then, later on, if you need to substitute a word with something else that works better for you, that's fine. But just hear it as it is. So, like for instance, you've heard the word promise, several times now. That is a key word within the map. Breakdown, that could conjure up all kinds of things. Basically, a breakdown is anything that changes the current course you're on onto a different track. That's the simple definition of a breakdown. So rather than taking it and running off on the word, just hear it as it is. And so one of the words that we'll be also using is customer and performer. And again, just hear them as the roles they represent. It's just the lingo of this. So, all right. So I hope everybody has gotten the link to the PowerPoint that Jennifer sent to all of you. It's on Google on Google.com. And I will be going through the slide now. And the way we're going to do this call is I'm going to just give some presentation. Probably will take me about 30 minutes, so bear with me so I can give you the background. We'll then do a short think and listen to see what questions might have come up during my presentation so that we can deal with those right away. We'll do about a 10-minute Q&A. And then we're going to go into some practicing. So as you're hearing me talk, what I'd like you to think about is what projects are you involved with, and pick one that you want to work on when we go into the practice mode. Okay, so just have that in mind as I'm going through and explaining these, so that when we go into our practice mode, you have something to work with. And Jennifer wanted to say something real briefly. Jennifer?
Thanks, Kirsten. So I just wanted to say IT. Those of you who have been on these calls before know that you can raise your hands. And if you have a phone or Skype pad, you can press the number 1 key to indicate that you have a question about IT, maybe the presentation or volume isn't working for you. And I will pull you aside and put you in a private breakout room and see if I can help you with that. If you have a question about something that Kirsten is saying around the content, then press number 2, and when Kirsten feels like it's an appropriate time, she will call on you. So again, number 1 is for IT needs, and number 2 is when you have a question about content. All right, Kirsten, thanks.
Yeah, and let's do it this way. If your content question is urgent, then raise your hand, because as I said, we will have a Q&A session before we go into the practice. So if you feel you can hold the question until the end, do so. But if it's something that really you need to have clarified right away, then raise your hand, and we'll do it that way. Okay, so I'm on the slideshow now. Slide 1, managing action practice. That's what the MAP stands for. And this is really about taking your actions and managing them in an effective way, or how Bob Dunham, who's the founder of this, the visionary of this process, calls it generative action. It's about generating results. It's not about spinning wheels. It's not about just making a task list. It's about turning what you're doing into a process by which you can manage it more in an effective and generative way. That's the idea behind this. So let me start you, so I'm going to slide 2. Let me start you off with a little fable that sort of sets the context of this. So a gentleman is traveling through the countryside, and he's coming upon a city or a little village, and he sees that there is a lot of construction going on, and so he goes up to the first guy, and he says, "Sir, what are you doing?" And the guy looks up from what he's doing. He's like, "Oh, can't you see? I am laying bricks." "Oh, okay." So he goes up to the next guy a little further over. He goes, Sir, what are you doing?" He goes, "Can't you see? I'm building a wall." "Oh, okay." So he walks up to the third guy and he's like, Sir, what are you doing?" And the third guy goes, "Oh, can't you see? I'm building a cathedral." End of fable. So the whole idea behind this fable is to understand that each of those separate steps, laying the bricks, building the wall, building the cathedral, these different, let's call them angles of perception really, are really important when you are looking at a project. Okay? So go to the next slide, because I want to give it in context with another tutorial that is coming up, and that's called Getting Things Done. So the MAP system, looking at it from this fable's perspective, deals with the cathedral level and the wall level and somewhat with the brick level. When you take the Getting Things Done tutorial, that will primarily deal with the bricks level. And let's look at that for a sec. So what is cathedral level? The cathedral level is your overall vision. It's the overall goal of what you want to create. And in the language of the MAP system, we call that your overall promise. What is it that you're promising you're going to accomplish? Okay? So in this table, the overall promise is, I will be building a cathedral by the next 10 years, let's say. So let's take it down to your guys' level. I will be graduating with a degree in integrative eco-social design from Gaia University by August of 2013. That could be an overall promise. Okay, so you can look at it from multiple different layers. Okay, so you can look at it from this project level. You can look at it from a very long-term goal. So let's see, you could say, okay, what do I want to have accomplished in 10 years and define that as your overall promise. Or you can take one smaller project that is done in 3 months, but that could be your overall promise. So you are the one who defines the scope of the cathedral at this point, okay? So then when you get to the walls level, then you look at, okay, what are the key promises? And other words that you've probably heard are milestones. That's probably the biggest one that you've heard. What is the milestone? What is the key promise, the promises that you need to fulfill? What walls do you need to build in order for that cathedral to show up? So the example that I used earlier with your degree program, well, you have to complete, one key promise is finish OP1 by such and such date, finish OP2 by such and such date. So those could each be a key promise. Attend all my Gaia radio calls that are required by such and such date. So all of those are the key promises that will together, when you put them all together, will help you fulfill your overall promise. Okay? And then at the bricks level, those are how do you manage the individual tasks that are required for you to be able to fulfill your key promises and then ultimately your overall promise. And that's where getting things done comes in incredibly handy. So those two tools together are, as far as I'm concerned, a match made in heaven. They really meld together perfectly. Okay, so let's take a step back again. Go to the next slide. That's called the foundation of action. So when you think about actions that you need to do, and so let me back up for a sec. A lot of what is presented in the map comes from a team perspective as well. So this is an incredible tool to help you manage actions when you are in a team setting. So one of the challenges that you might have in translating this tool right now is, especially for, let's say, your degree program, is just you, and to determine who are you actually, quote-unquote, reporting to or who is your customer may be a little bit more challenging. So think about it also in the terms of being in a team and having a team leader, or you being the team, being the team leader. And no, Jennifer, I don't have a question. My hand was raised and I didn't do it. So anyway, so when you look at this, action is the final outcome of this process. But what underlies action? Well, it's your commitment to that action, right? If you're not committed to the action, it doesn't happen. And I'm sure all of us, myself included, have had that experience where we've, said, oh yeah, we'll do something, but the commitment to it, the full commitment wasn't there, and therefore it just sort of slipped and slipped and slipped, and it didn't happen, right? So what's underneath commitment to get to that commitment is conversation. Now, it could be a conversation with yourself, or if you're in a team setting, it needs to have the conversation around, first of all, what actions are required and the type of commitment we have to those actions together. It's a coordination issue. But fundamentally, under every one of those three, the action that underlies is underlined by commitment, that is underlined by the conversation, is care. And I really, really, really want to emphasize this one, because care, what do you care about? That question, when you can truly answer that one, that will inform everything else that flows from you there. And you can watch. If you don't care about something in a strong enough way, then the conversations are going to be missing, the commitment is not going to be there, and the actions won't happen. So one of the key things around this MAP process is to always understand what do you care about and revisit it on a regular basis, because your cares may shift, okay? And in my experience around defining your care, one of the things I would caution is cares that require others to do something, okay? So because you don't have control over that. So if you care about your company getting better, for instance, or I'm lacking examples right now, but if it requires somebody to do something, that's it's a dangerous care because you don't have control over that. But if it has to do with your own, if you say, I care about being happy, I care about having a right livelihood, I care about my family being healthy, all of those where you can have an influence around it, where you can actually make changes, those are really, really powerful cares to be really, really clear about. I still have my leadership team that I'm part of. It's like we were set up in my leadership course in guilds like you guys are in Gaia U type things. And we still meet every 2 weeks. And one of the guys is so great about this aspect. He has a pattern for himself now where every Friday he does his own map, and it's a personal map. He really doesn't have a customer for this map except us as a team. But it's about what does he care about, and then what are his promises? What are his overall promises and his key promises? And I tell you, it's been phenomenal to watch his life unfold. The more clear he's gotten around his cares, the more clear he got around his overall promise and his key promises, and his life has been just amazing to watch unfold. He started a new coaching practice, and it's become huge, and he coaches all over the world, and it's happened within 2 years or such. So I'm saying that to invite you to actually use this process for your own personal guideline for your life. Okay, let's move on to the next slide called the promise. So let's pull this apart a little bit just so you can understand the anatomy of a promise, okay? So generally, before a promise is made, there's always some request. This might be a request from yourself to yourself. So again, this could be an internal conversation, or it could be, for instance, me making a request of Ava, okay? But there's always some kind of a request that precedes a promise. And so what we call the person who makes the request a customer, okay? That's just, again, the language here, but just so we have a baseline to talk from, okay? Once a request is made, there's actually a process that I've decided to not focus on here, and that is around the evaluation of the request. Are you actually able to do the request right now, and what to do in that case? That's in a little bit more detail. That's a little bit beyond the time we have right now. But let's say you've evaluated the request, and you decided that you can make a promise. So then there's two aspects to it. Okay, you make the promise, and we'll look at the anatomy of making a promise, and then you manage a promise, and we'll look at that in detail as well. So once you make a promise, you become what we call, again in this lingo, the performer. So now we have a relationship between the customer and the performer. And it's up to the performer to make a clear promise and then to manage that promise effectively. Okay? So why don't you move on to the next slide. So let's look at making an effective request first. So let's take the first element. What does it require to make an effective request? Because that informs then an effective promise. So first of all, what are the elements of an effective request? Okay, so first of all, what is being requested? So the specifics of the request. I need you to have a report. I need you to print out a report for me. Okay, that's the what. Okay. Now, condition of satisfaction. This is a really important one, and oftentimes this piece is missed. And that is, and I need my request to look like this when you're done for me to be satisfied. So in my example, it would be, okay, and this report needs to have the name, the address, the email, and the phone number of all of our current associates. That would be the condition of satisfaction. And I tell you, this one is one to really, really ponder, because oftentimes requests are very vague and they're not clear to the person you're requesting to what it is actually that you're looking for and what will make you satisfied when you're done. And so this type of clarity, practicing this type of clarity is essential. So then the next one, and the same thing, by when. And this is a trigger point, and I want you to see if this triggers anything in you when I say any request and the subsequent promise needs to have a due date. I get a lot of pushback on that one, but I'm going to make the declaration right now that a promise is not an effective promise unless it has a specific time attached to it. Why? Because if you don't, then there is a very open-ended promise where you cannot manage around it. Okay? Now, let me sidestep here for a sec. The thing about, no, actually, I will do this in the managing section. I'm coming back to middle. Sorry. So, the what and by when. Okay, let's look at this for sake of what. So, my example of I need, a report printed out for the sake of what? Oftentimes when you make a request and you leave out why you're asking for it, it oftentimes leaves the person you're asking dangling as to why you're doing it. And obviously, if I'm a boss and I'm asking, like for instance, Ava to do something, she doesn't always need to know why I'm asking. But I make an effort to explain to her why I'm asking for a particular thing, because it gives an anchor point to the performer. It gives them the reason why you need it. So something that otherwise in your mind you go, well, that's a stupid request. There's no reason for me to do that. But if I give the for sake of what, then that sort of brain turning doesn't happen. And I mean, you can practice this as you're making requests of people, and you leave out the for sake of what, play with it, and then play with telling them why you're asking, and see the difference, see the energy, and feel the energetic difference that has. And then the fourth one, and this one is a really interesting one, background of obviousness. That's the one where we assume that the person assumes the same things we do, that they know the same things we do, that there are certain things that we just don't need to talk about because, well, we all know about that already. Well, I tell you, this is another potential pitfall, and this is where a lot of the miscommunications can happen, because what we assume is obvious in the background may not be obvious in the background to the person who you're asking, making the request to. So again, this is one to watch out for. so, for instance, in my little request to Ava about, printing out the report, background of obviousness could be that, I assume that she knows how to do it. So I don't need to ask her, are you capable of doing it? Because I know she can do it. So I'm not going to talk about it. So in my case, I would leave that background off. But for instance, somebody else, I would ask, I would have to first figure out whether that person actually has access to the database, whether they know how to run reports, views, and all that. So when you make requests, just be aware that there might be things behind the curtain that you're assuming that they don't know about. So again, it's an awareness thing. Okay? So then so go to the next slide. So then when you make a promise, okay, before you make the promise, you need to assess things. You need to assess, and this is, it's really fascinating when you guys all were checking in. One of the primary things I heard is too many projects, too many things on my plate, and can't manage them all, don't know how to balance, and all of that. Well, this is where you are going to need to make the commitment to really do a more thorough assessment, okay? And so the assessment really is what we call the 4 C's. So when you assess whether you can make a promise and actually add something else to your plate, you need to do the following. Do you have the competence to make this promise? Can you actually take on this new project with the competence you have, or are you feeling comfortable in knowing that you can gain the competence in the time needed that the promise needs to be made? Okay, so competence is a big one. Capacity. This is the big one that you guys are all talking about. Do you actually have the capacity to take on another project? And if you don't, if you have to, map it out. See what you have on your plate right now. How many hours a week does it take out of your time? Do you have extra hours to take it on? I mean, I know this from myself. Sometimes I'll take something on that, I have a hunch I may have some time for it, but I'm not sure, and I can get myself in trouble when I don't analyze this. So capacity analysis is something that you guys are going to need to really get good at to really be able to make effective promises. Then the commitment. Commitment is a really big one. The question of whether you have the commitment to take on this promise is one that really takes some soul searching. Is this something that you really are able and willing to take on? And to basically pick up the ball and run with it. And if you don't have the commitment, I guarantee you, if you make a promise that you'll do something but you don't have the commitment to do it, it is not going to happen. Okay? So this is a big one. And then finally, care. And this is going back to what I was talking about. If you make this promise, will it take care of the things you care about? And I guarantee you that if you have that question, if you first of all have been clear on your cares, and then you ask that question, if I take on this promise, will it take care of what I care about? You will be able to hone your promises and maybe shave off some of the promises that you've made already, some of the projects you've taken on, because care will inform everything you do. At one point, I was in Ashland, Oregon, living there, and I swear I had taken on like 4 or 5 volunteer projects, various things, community development and some in the sustainable economic development, and you name it. And I hit a capacity wall for sure, and I stepped back, and I had to look at really what do I care about. And, could I have made the argument that, all of those in some way fell under what I care about? But when I really did the analysis, and I have to say one of my cares was that I have sufficient funds to live, that I'm earning enough money so that I can live a comfortable life. Well, I was taking on so many volunteer projects that I didn't have enough time to work and earn. And because of that, I decided to step back from most of the volunteer projects. I kept one or two, but I decided that was a care that I was not taking care of at that time, and because of that, I needed to step back from some of these others. So that's how you can evaluate some of these in how you make promises. Okay, so then go to the next slide. So then making an effective promise, okay, one of the things that is really good, especially when you're in a boss situation, if you can understand what your boss cares about or what the team leader actually cares about, and you do that through conversation with them, and having, you might not want to directly ask them what do you care about, but through conversation, if you can understand your customer's care, you can make much more effective promises, okay? And this, like for instance, if you're involved in community development or such, there will be a lot of customers that you're dealing with, different interest groups. But if you can start understanding what the care is of these different interest groups, then the promises you make will be much more effective, because then you can start taking care of what they care about, and that is really a powerful place, and I don't mean powerful in the manipulative way, but in a much more effective way. When you make your promise, then you again state the what, to make sure that you both are clear on what it is, the by when, and the condition of satisfaction. You want to make sure that you the performer, and your customer always knows exactly those three things, that you're clear on that. We know what you're doing, by when you're doing it, and we both will know when you're done. And that is important, because then you can start managing the promise effectively. Okay? And so let's move into the next slide, which is how to manage a promise. And I'm going to get a little bit on a soapbox here around how lightly we take managing promises. We oftentimes so lightly throw out, sure, I'll do that for you. And because there may not be the commitment or the care behind it, we just sort of throw it out and forget about it. And what that breeds is distrust. It's out of integrity, for your word is the only thing truly you have. And if you throw out your promises lightly, it will start eroding trust around you. It will start eroding your integrity, and it will undermine your care. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Even the small things, and think about this in your own life, even the small things. And we're talking just, sure, I'll move this thing from over here to over here, and then you just throw it out lightly as a promise, and you forget about it and don't do it. I guarantee you that the person who you made that promise to knows that you made that promise, and will just think, I guess, first of all, they must have forgotten, and then, maybe they don't care about it, and there will be an energetic coming between you that is off balance, unaligned. And it might be microscopic, but if it happens again and again, that microscopic sand kernel in the oyster will become more of a rub. I guarantee you. And it is such an important one to understand, and to stay in integrity with your promises is so important. It is your word, and if you cannot stand behind your word, then don't make the promise. Okay? So what happens in managing your promises? This is the key here. So I always hear, well, I don't want to make a promise with a due date because, what if something happens and then I feel I've failed? And this is probably one of the key things, is people are afraid to make promises because they are afraid that if they don't fulfill the promise, then they have failed and they're not good enough, and it triggers all of these deep emotions that many of us have. And so what I'm saying is get over that and understand that managing a promise is how you overcome that, because we all understand, and as action learners, being in the action learning process, it's been said many times by many of us that action learning, following the action learning path changes our path. It does. Things happen, different things show up. We need to change the way we're going and all that. We know life happens. So it's not about, integrity does not come about not fulfilling the original promise you made. Integrity comes about by managing your promises effectively. Okay? So how do you do that? So in the MAP process that, for instance, Ava does with me, she has her promises listed, her key promises, and then she tells me on every given week, my promise is on track and I don't need anything. Great. Then I leave her alone with it. I know she's handling whatever she promised she needed to handle, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. The status report, if you will, is called a breakdown. So something happened that changed the course of my promise, but I'm managing, and I will be able to fulfill the promise. So the reason this one is there is because it gives me as a customer a heads up that there may be an issue coming up. So I'm not totally unprepared when there's a total breakdown and everything is falling apart. No, she's saying there is a breakdown, but I think I'm handling it. But I'm just giving you a sort of a slight heads up, okay? The third one is a breakdown, and I do need your help. So it means, okay, I've tried to figure it out myself. I tried to address the issue, but I can't, and I'm going to need you to step in and help me figure out the promise so that I can still fulfill it. Perfect. So as me as a customer, I would much prefer that than, again, hearing that the promise was not fulfilled and now we have to mop up after the fact. I'd much rather know that, okay, it's time for me to step in. And then the fourth one is there's a breakdown. I won't be able to manage it. Your help won't be able to do it. So I'm going to need to renegotiate my promise. And oftentimes that says I need to change the due date. I need to, move it back by a week or such. And that's something that we have done with you guys as associates with your output packets. Oftentimes, we set output due dates, right? But then we tell you if you cannot fulfill that promise to get your output in by that time, then renegotiate with us. Come back and say, okay, I need an extra week. And so that's the invitation to you guys, is how to manage your promises for your output packets, is come to the advisor and be in touch with them and talk to them, see if you need their help or not. Because, what happens is if an output packet doesn't come and we don't hear anything, then it becomes a question of, do they care and are they committed, And so, or are they over capacity? So then we start looking at what help do you guys need, or is this really a right fit? So that's what I'm talking with integrity. That's what I'm talking with integrity, and that's what I'm talking with trust and all of that. So manage those promises effectively. And then finally, completing a promise. How do you complete a promise? You declare that you're done. I've uploaded my output package, and all the aspects are in there, and you can now review it. You declare completion, And then you check for satisfaction. Now, with the output packet, obviously, you get an official review, but with any other promises, you say, and did I complete it to your satisfaction, or do I still need to do anything? Did I print out the report as you expected it? So those are the two aspects when you complete, to just, put that dot at the end, okay? Great, so that gives you the sort of the theoretical context around the MAP process. So as Jennifer said, I sent out a MAP, excuse me, I sent out a MAP template through Jennifer. So if you have a moment, go ahead and open that up. I just want to briefly show you what a map looks like in reporting. Okay, so managing action template practice. Okay, so first is key accomplishments. We want to celebrate what it is that you've accomplished, and that's always a great way to start a report. And then red flags, and this one is really important. A red flag is basically anything that needs to be addressed urgently. That's like, okay, we really need to deal with this right now, and get it out at the front is always a good idea, okay? Then next is your stated overall promise. What is your overall promise? So for instance, in Ava's case, one of her overall promise is to be the administrative, let's see, Ava, do you have your promise hands? Actually, let me give you mine. My overall promise, one of my roles here at Gaia University is I'm the Director of Operations, so one of my overall promise is that I will manage the operational functioning of Gaia University in the most professional, effective, I forget all the adjectives, way, such that every associate who comes through Gaia University, from the beginning they first contact us to the moment they graduate, will be treated with professionalism and accuracy and timeliness and all of those things. So that's my overall promise, okay? So then when you look at your key promises, okay, so then you do an assessment of how you're generally doing with that overall promise. So that's just a general broad stroke. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about my job and all of that. It just gives the person you're reporting to a fairly good sense of your overall mood. And then you look at the key promises. And so one of my key promises is I'm assuring that all the financial data is accurate within 2 weeks of their creation. Same with operational data. Those are two of my key promises, okay? So you need to look at, what projects are you involved with, what is the overall promises, and what are the key promises. And then you do a discussion. You do an assessment of them. Are they on time? Are they in breakdown? But I'm managing. Are they in breakdown and I need your help? Or are they in breakdown and I need to renegotiate? And then there's an area that we call discussion of key promises. And that's just basically you giving a little overview of things that your customer ought to know about that. There's a couple of little areas also that, what have I learned? That's always a nice thing to just think about. These are not essential parts of the map, but they're just nice to keep alive. And then there's this thing called actions from last week and actions from next week and beyond. That is not essential, but it's a good way of sort of listing some of the key tasks you did. The thing you do not want a map to go into is, and you don't want to list all your individual tasks. What you want to have established is that if you make a promise, your customer trusts that you have the capacity, the competence, the commitment, and the care to fulfill the promise. And if you can tell me that you're managing the promise, I will trust that. And I don't need to know that you did this and this and this and this and this and this and this to manage your promises. And guess what that does to team meetings? Makes it far more effective, less boring to everyone that is in there. Don't we all cringe when we hear about, oh, let's have a meeting, a team meeting or some kind of a meeting at work? I hear across the board whenever I go into a company, oh, meetings are the worst. They're so boring. They're a waste of my time. Da-da-da-da-da-da. It's because a lot of things are talked about that are just not relevant. And so what you want to have, the relevance is at the promise levels. Are we managing our promises because we are all together fulfilling our team promise? And so this tool becomes far more effective in managing a team's action or actions between you and your customer. So that was a very condensed overview of the MAP system. And so what I'd like to do right now is just do a brief think and listen, and I believe all of you ought to know what a think and listen is, but basically we're going to do 3 minutes each. One person just thinks out loud, any questions that came up, any thoughts that came up, and the other person just listens, and then after 3 minutes you'll switch and you will get a notification with a bell, and then we'll come back and do some questions. Okay? So Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind handling that part.
You are now in a breakout. Please begin. Please change partners. Please bring your conversation to a close. This breakout session is now ending.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hello back. So, am I on? Let's see. I don't know.
Yep, you're on.
Okay, great. Thanks. Excellent. So the way we're going to do this real quick, we have about 20 minutes left. So what I'd like to do is just open it up to those of you who have questions, that have questions come up. So if you have a question, press the number 2 button. Okay, and if there's lots of questions, that's how we're going to finish up the call. If there's not, then we might be able to take a little bit of a practice session in here as well. So let's see if there's any questions that came up during your Think and Listen. So please press the number 2.
So Virginia has a question.
Great.
This is one I actually have several, but I'll try to keep it short. This is one that came up with it when I was discussing with Haley. I'm involved in a project that's creating or has created a food bank community garden, and I was not aware of the map, and neither was Andrea. Andrea is the director of the foundation of the nonprofit I'm working with, and of course I'm the Gaia associate. So I'm really not, it's a collaboration. I'm not really clear. I guess we're each both customer and performer. But I have to say, it's kind of flowed naturally, the whole progress, and there has not been a breakdown. I'm not sure how the map framework would enhance this. Although when I did discuss this with Haley, I started thinking it through, and I thought, well, if we decided that we wanted to go in 2 separate directions down the road, the map would help us work through that process more smoothly, whereas this would come up more as a surprise. Could you talk about that, how to fit this into something that tends to flow naturally without a lot of structure?
Mhm. Yeah, that's one of the more challenging aspects to look at, because if a project happens, and that's really a lot of projects do that, they just sort of happen naturally, and it's generally when there is not as much complexity in the project, and there is not a time frame by which you feel you have to have it done. That's generally when things can just emerge on their own, and I don't see a challenge with that. I think the times when a map can become very, very useful is when things become a little bit more complex. More people may be involved that are doing different aspects of it, and you need to be more clear on who's doing what, who's holding what promise, and start bringing in a little bit more accountability around by when, because a lot of projects oftentimes depend on one thing being completed before the next starts, and when people are not aware of that, that's when a lot of the breakdowns happen. So I think that's when you can start looking at the map process. Also, just think about it from a personal perspective. This is one of your projects, so you could call the Food Bank Community Project one of your key promises. But then what other aspects are in your life that are a little bit harder to manage, or what other key promises do you have? And just to map it out can sometimes help bring clarity to what's going on just for you personally. So it's not always just a 2 people involved. It could be just personally for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Well, that would definitely fit in with what I'm faced with now. Definitely. Thank you, Kirsten.
Great. Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, we have Rhea has a question as well.
Yeah, what we were talking about was just I work mostly by myself, and I definitely see how this could really facilitate clear communication and accurate communication. But just could you maybe talk a bit more about how this could be specifically adapted to solo work and making promises to yourself?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, this is one of those where you know the commitment to doing it for yourself is probably the first aspect of it, because oftentimes the idea of doing this for ourselves seems a little silly, but I think once you get the pattern, and I think my friend who I talked about earlier, who's part of my team, is probably the best example that I know of. I personally don't even have as strong of a pattern as he does, where he reviews his own map every Friday. He has set aside on his calendar 2 hours in the morning, and that's what he does, is he reviews his own map. So the question that you ask yourself is, what is my... Well, first of all, what do I care about is always the first thing you start off with. But once you've gotten that, it's like, what is your overall promise that you want to complete? And you could, that's really up to you to see what at this moment is most relevant for you. So it's not about, trying to, map out your entire life until you are, on your deathbed. That's not what this is about. But really, what is your current overall promise? So I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing this. So let me read you his overall promise. And he reports to himself, and then he shares it with us as a team. But here is his current overall promise. During 2012, I am committed to being my offer. So this is about his coach training and what he basically serves leaders who are dissatisfied and help them become satisfied. So that's his offer. I will continue to let go, to stay present, open, true, to accept the unknown, to trust my intuition as a vehicle. By October, I promise to produce the following conditions of satisfaction. I am supporting a measurable impact on the lives of others and in my own life. I am at peace with my world and myself. I am supporting my family financially, emotionally, through travel and abundance. My business is bigger than what I alone am able to produce. So, and he has several more points. So if you see, he has sort of a general statement where he says, I promise to reconnect successful leaders to their care, to support them in learning how to be more effective, to help them create satisfied lives for themselves and those around them. Okay? So he defined his overall promise and had bullet points, and notice he said, by October 2012, this is what I promise to produce. Okay? So for right now, since you are in Gaia U, you could focus your overall promise specifically on what surrounds your Gaia U work. Or you could, become more broad. But again, the promise needs to have a due date, and it needs to be measurable. Okay? And then you look at what are the key promises around that. So, I assume many of you have multiple different projects that you're involved with. And so then you look at what are the pieces of your project that would be a key promise. And you map that out. Finish Gaia U by a particular time could be a key promise. Or you could go more granular and say, I will have my output packets due by their due dates, whatever those are, and these are the particular projects I'm thinking I'll work on. So in some way, your lipid in some way became one of your promises. or became multiple key promises. So you could actually draw from your lipid and really look at what did you promise in the lipid. It was your learning intentions. Did you actually make them promises, or were they just, more loosely given intent? Did they actually have your care, commitment behind them? That's the care, commitment, capacity, and competence behind them. So does that make more sense for you?
Yeah, thank you.
Great. So do we have any more questions? Okay. Okay. So let me just tell you what else I sent you. We don't quite have the time to go into this, but
Kirsten, Jorge has just raised his hand, so maybe if it's a question we can.
Great.
He
Jorge.
When he started talking.
Great.
Okay. Well, it has to do with everything like is included in Gaia. People that are working in projects that are external source. How do you?
I cannot hear you, Jorge. You're coming very broken. Try again.
Okay. How about that? Well.
Yeah, just stop talk.
I mean, we've been listening to already Gaia U. We've listened to Virginia, and she's working with somebody else, and that's on a project. But how about external people? How do you make them commit to you as a customer? How have you tried that? How do you? I mean, we're make people that are promising things to you work carpenter days on time. How can you?
Great. Well, there's multiple levels to that. I didn't get the whole question, but I think I got the essence of it, and that is basically how do you create effective customers for your promises, and how can you ask people to make effective promises to you? Did I get that about right, Jorge? Okay.
I'm having problems here. Yes, that's it.
Exactly. So great question, because the role of the customer is so essential. So even if it's a promise to yourself, like in the question that Ria asked, the promise, the role of the customer who is actually receiving your promises and looking at how you're managing the promise is just as essential. And so here's my recommendation. Basically, I introduced Leora, who is my customer, to the MAP process a few years ago, and it's taken a little bit of time to have her understand the value of it and become an effective customer for me. Because what needs to happen is that as you report to them, they need to be aware of your promises. They need to understand them, so that when you manage them, they have valuable input. Like when you say, I need your help, I'm having a breakdown on this promise, I need your help, they need to be able to understand that. So the main thing I think to practice at this stage is if you notice you're making a promise to somebody, make it with those four the four elements that I went through. Be clear on what it is that you're promising. Be very clear that by when you're promising it, and then be clear that they understand this condition of satisfaction, meaning that they know when it's done. Okay, and then if it's a longer-term project, just let them know that you will be reporting to them. So, for instance, for me, I just got another client, and I basically, in my proposal, said, I want a rhythm of conversation with you, meaning I want to meet with you on a weekly basis, and I will create a map for you. And I introduced him to the map, and I said, and here's what my map outlines in terms of what I'm going to be doing